God, my picture's awful. God. Jackson. I might let him in. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Dean. How's things? Who's that? Chris. Hi, Chris.
Oh.
Hi, guys.
Oh, all right.
Everybody.
Hi, Dean.
So, let me down a bit. He's in his hayloft again.
That's the field next
You
to me.
cloned out the electricity wires, is it? Right?
Sorry?
Is that the one where you took out the electricity wires?
No, that's the one just right next to my house.
Ah, right.
That's the field. That's
That's not a real. That's just a bit. Yeah.
yeah, it's not quite like that at the moment.
Anything, Philip?
Oh, yeah.
I know we're not getting Heather, James, or Andrew tonight. Just so you know about it.
Linda's not with us either.
Right.
Ray, I might have to slip away during the evening. We've got people coming, so
Okay.
apologies if I do, but I'll just sign out quietly.
Okay.
What have you all been up to then for the last month or so?
I've been
quiet.
a program for Whitney.
How'd you get on with the dragonflies today?
How did I get on?
Yeah.
Yeah, really well. I've only processed a couple of shots. You'll see them later. But I've been 2 years trying to get, well, you know, not constantly for 2 years, but a few attempts for a couple of years to try to get dragonflies in flight. It's like trying to get smoke in your fingers. It's really hard to do. You'll see that I've processed a couple of shots I took out of the 900 that it took to get them. But you'll see a bit later on. I'm myself this evening there. I'll say that. I've discovered that manual focus is not the way to go.
No.
I don't know what you're talking about, Dean. Manual focus is the only way to go.
Talking about
For
dragon.
me,
Might be with stars on it.
well, that's what I'm talking about.
They tend not
I
to go
bloody
very far, do they?
hell, Ray, you're out in the fields now. You must get. I mean, you've got a fantastic hub. I mean, how far out can you go?
The world.
You know, I mean, I just realised now when I go past your house, I'll have to be irradiated.
Yeah.
The new girl.
Just talking of focusing, I found a feature on my camera, and I don't know whether it's a general one. You can let me know. It's called Catch in Focus. Have you got that? Where you can set up an area, and what it does is you hold the shutter down, and when something comes into the area, it goes off. So you pre-focus on an area, wait till something comes into it.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with
It's
that.
called Catch and Focus.
No, I've never heard of it.
No?
Not until now.
I haven't tried it yet. Well, I'm going to have a give it a go. I found it the other day. I suppose it's for, you know, it'd be useful for action shots, you know.
Like Tony in his wallet.
Maybe for dragonflies, who knows?
My camera's got different cases for the continuous focus, and you can have it where things that enter in from the sides are focused on. So it might be something similar to that, I guess. You've all gone quiet.
You're doing a charge impression as well at the moment, Jane.
God.
Yeah, move your camera a little bit. Or sit on a cushion.
There's a sort of ominous silence from Gene.
I can see the top of your head, Gene.
She hasn't enabled the microphones, probably.
Ah, that's better.
Ah,
Say something, Jean. Oh, gone funny again. Oh, cool. Um, I can sort of hear some of you and not others.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hello, Jean.
Yeah,
Hello, can you hear
I
me?
can hear you now.
Not well.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Hello? Can you hear me now? I can hear everybody else.
Well, my internet's all-
It's
very
the camera.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah, now.
Ah,
Can you hear me better now? Not you want to on no.
There's a bit of feedback. You'll just have to listen to it.
Yeah, I can hear you. Why can't you hear me?
You've got an echo.
Okay.
Feedback.
Oh, right. Okay.
you sound like one of those audio effects on a 1970s sort of disco song, Gene.
What was that? What was that thing the chair
Yeah,
sang?
song.
And they had
Yeah,
phasing.
a song like that.
I'm not doing that like that.
It sounded good if you sang a song.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't hear me too.
It's techno rock.
I'll just listen.
Don't know who else we're going to get.
No, it's still on the ground.
I mean, I haven't seen James recently.
So James has gone off the front.
Has he?
No, I don't think there's anybody else. Who was the new lady that you had a contact from, Dean?
Well, she said just messaged me to say that she's not joining in tonight. She's busy.
She's Polish.
Are we getting an echo? Are we all getting an echo?
Yeah, I can. It's not very good, is it?
We all get it.
Ray, you're all right on here. Dean, that sounds good. Tony, we could hear you. Well, I could.
You can hear me all right, can you?
Yeah.
Because I can hear sort of an echo. There's obviously some feedback going on.
Yeah.
Jane, could you put yours on mute just a second?
Who, me?
Oh, Jane. Right. Is that any different?
Yeah, echo's gone.
Yeah, that's
You,
fine.
Jane,
Echo's
you're
gone.
causing the problem.
Yeah.
There's feedback going through. It's
From mine. Let me turn my phone off. In case it's that. There you go. I'm having trouble with my internet. It's not doing very well.
And you sound all right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
definitely James was causing the problem.
Maybe it was the phone.
Well, perhaps we should start.
Go for it.
I have a presentation, and they always say you should never start a presentation with an apology, so I'm not going to.
Sorry,
Oh, go on.
Oh, sorry. But there are some aspects of this. I can think of
Switch off.
two people who
Right.
who would know a lot more than me about some aspects of it in terms of film photography. Nevertheless, I'll crash on with it and see how it goes, and then you can put your piece in at the end. Right, so if I share my screen, host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Nope.
No, you won't let me. Have
Right.
you disabled it?
Try again. It should work now.
Ah, that's better. Oops, where am I? There we are. Can you see it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Basically, it's a history of photography. And I've had great fun doing it because I found out there's so much I didn't know. Excuse me. So I'll let me get at the. Come on. There we are. All sorts of pop-ups here, sorry. Right, can you see a clear screen now?
Looks fine.
Okay, so just an overview of what I was going to talk about. It's the invention and early development of photography and the camera. Then the evolution of the film camera, which I'm thinking of really as the development of cameras at least, thinking of the 20th century, things changed a lot in the turn of the century. And that was the 19th to the 20th, by the way. And then just a short thing on digital technology. So I thought the first thing is, so, well, what is a camera? And I thought, well, I'll put a picture up of one. Because I'm sure a lot of people look at the Radcliffe camera and think, well, why is it called a camera? Most of you probably know that and know the origins, but I thought it would just be useful to go through it. It's actually derived from the Latin word, and if you think about camera in Italian and chambre in French, then effectively it means a room. And the Radcliffe camera, just as a matter of historical interest, was a room opened in 1749 to house the Radcliffe Science Library. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is still part of the Bodleian Library Group. That's where the camera came from. Then, sorry, I keep getting bloody pop-ups. Let's get these out of the way. I'm sure you can't see them, but talk a little bit about the camera obscura. It's been known for a long time that if you have a very small hole, it tends to project an image, if it's small enough, of what's the other side of it. And what they call the camera obscura effectively meant a dark room. And the word photography is derived from the Greek photos and graphe, if my pronunciation's right. First camera obscura was invented in 1921 by an Arab scientist with a pinhole in his tent and an image from outside into a darkened area. And a lot of so-called photography was done in the way shown in the image, that you had a big room, a box with a small hole in it, and the projected image was then sketched over. Camera obscura. If somebody said that to me a while ago, I'd sort of think of these places. There are quite a few around the country. This one here is in Edinburgh, and basically it's a room with a very, very good viewpoint. And I've never been to it, but apparently the one in Edinburgh is extremely good for projecting the images of the city. And the principle is that most of these rooms have a lens in the top. I mean, originally they would be pinholes, but you'd have a lens at the top and a mirror, and that would be projected into a dark room onto a table, and people would gather around and look at it. The picture up here, there's one in Bristol, and here's a picture of the Clifton Bridge. And I picked this one up from the internet. It's somebody who set one up in their back garden. I don't know how interesting the images are, but that
Looks
was
like a portaloo.
it does actually, doesn't it? So the camera obscura itself was not really became small enough until 17th century, so it's going back quite a long way. And again, I think that first image on the left-hand side is self-explanatory. You've got a lens on the front, or a pinhole, and then a mirror, and then probably a frosted glass screen onto which the picture would be projected, from which you could sketch a drawing. And on the right-hand side, a little box, typical camera. Just a little bit about the theory. Why should a pinhole be able to project an image, and why is it always upside down? It's the same as a single convex lens. You will get an inverted image. But basically, I suppose in theory, the hole should be infinitely small. Then you see nothing, but that's the theory. The smaller it is, the sharper the image you will get. And basically, if you take the tree on the left-hand side and you take a point at its base, light, as we know, always travels in a straight line unless it goes through another medium. So you would get the light going up here. Can you see my cursor? You go up here directly to the top, and it would effectively, if the tree was bright enough in the sunlight, it would you would see that part of the tree. You wouldn't see that part of the tree at the bottom, simply because there's no means of the light getting there. Take the line from the top of the tree, goes through the pinhole, so you'd see at the top of the tree at the bottom. And then, of course, the centre of the tree and the image, and so forth with all the other different lines. If you had, the reason you need a small hole is, if you had a large hole, and this image here shows a very large hole, what you would see from the top of the tree is a light coming through the hole at this point. So you would see the top of the tree at this point, but you would also see it at this point. So you would get a blurred image. Looking at the scale of that picture, a hole of that size, you probably see nothing at all, actually. This would just something I will recirculate this afterwards, and Dean's going to send a recording of the session. This really goes back to the invention of the lens. The size of the pinhole is actually the limitation of the technique, because the smaller the hole, although the sharper the image, the less light you'll get through. So it's something that would never really have worked in a practical sense. Although there are there are one or two applications for it even today. One of which is for looking at sunspots and things like that. So you have a tube, for example, with a covering on one end and a pinhole through it, and then a translucent piece of glass or paper at the other end, onto which the image is shone. So effectively, you can look at things very easily, like sunspots and eclipses and the like. The original lenses, it appears, although different reports say different times, but between the 11th and the 13th century, the reading stones were used as effectively as magnifying glass, I think, for people with bad eyesight. And they're basically a glass sphere, which was not too difficult to make, sliced in half. Early photographic experiments used single element convex lenses, but they likewise had all sorts of problems. What they were doing was focusing an image over a very large flat film plane. So you had curvature and you had optical and chromatic aberrations. So looking at a timeline, 1839 was when Charles Chevalier created an achromatic lens with two element lenses, one from crown glass and one from flint glass, to cut down on chromatic aberration. You might wonder why that matters if all their stuff at that time was done in black and white. But of course, there was a colour effect. and the colour was scattered, therefore it did actually cause blurring on black and white films, basically from colour dispersion. I thought I'd put this in as a little bit of trivia, that the first selfie was done in 1839. I'm sure he didn't hold his camera on the end of a stick, but basically he took a picture of himself. The oldest known intentionally created photographic self-portrait. That's good. I could write a slide there. Oh, I know that one. That's what I was going to put in. It's something I've forgotten to put in. I did a bit of experimentation myself a while ago and took a lens body cap and drilled a hole in it, and then cut a disc of aluminium film and stuck a pin through it. And you put this inside the lens cap and put that onto the camera without the lens. And I got some quite successful results. I think I did show those once before, but it does prove that the technique is quite easy to reproduce. Now here's a difficult bit. Does anybody know how to pronounce this guy's name? Nicephore Nepiche, is it? Obviously not. But he recorded the first image with a camera obscura. I mean, really, people were looking for automatic means rather than sketching of producing an image. This took 8 hours of exposure and faded very quickly. And it was captured on a paper coated with silver chloride. Just mention here, perhaps, you can probably explain in very simple terms, in a single sentence, photographic film. And it is based on the fact that it's in most cases that if you expose a silver salt, which could be chloride, nitrate, bromide, iodide, you expose it to light and it will darken. And this is really the basis. There are some very complex chemical mixes for photographic film, but that very simple principle does explain and is probably used in some way in every technique, and I'm not going to attempt to really talk about them at all. This name, Louis Daguerre, worked with Nepiche, if that's the correct pronunciation, went to develop what's called the daguerreotype process. I think that was reduced to minutes of exposure in the camera, introduced in 1839. This was relatively simple, but it was a plate. It was a plate of copper, silver plated and highly polished. It was then treated with mercury vapor and washed to fix the image. But basically, you know, in some way, you're going to get a silver salt developing. It would produce a negative image, which I think is self-evident, that the light bit's dark and the dark bit's lighten. You've then got the problem, once you've made the image, of effectively making it permanent or fixing it. And so you would need another chemical to wash it with, which would fix the image and then prevent it from developing any further when it's exposed to light. The interesting thing about this particular method that he did depending on, because it was highly polished, depending on the angle you looked at it from, it would appear as a negative or a positive. And there's a little picture of Monsieur Daguerre using his technique. There was another type of method, which used silver iodide. And this was a sheet of paper coated with silver iodide and exposed to light in a camera. Same principle as just explained. But you can see here the a picture of the man himself, and then two pictures, a negative and a positive image of the tree. A few little bits of factoids or trivia. Photo books, 1843, that was the first photo book. A lady who was a British botanist and wanted to record her works, and she used the Henry Fox Talbot process, and believed to be one of history's first female photographers. I won't go through all these. You'll be able to follow those up and look into them if you want afterwards. But 1851, this just explains the development of techniques. There was a collodion process which needed only 2 to 3 seconds of exposure. Most of these processes were wet plates on the back of the camera. So, you know, you had to process them pretty quickly. So, you know, it wasn't the sort of thing you'd easily take out into the field and take pictures of like it is today. 1871, Richard Leach Maddock invented a dry plate silver bromide process. So you could produce a negative and didn't need to develop it immediately because it was stable over time. And I think really the thing I haven't mentioned, of course, is how do we produce a positive? And most of them were done by contact. So you would take another film against which the original negative would be placed. And depending on whether, if it was a glass plate and it was transparent, then you could subject it to light. Otherwise, chemical processes were used and you would convert the dark to the light and the light to dark, and thereby produce a positive. But it wasn't my intention to go into the detail of all of those. Perhaps a significant thing, 1875, was Leon Warneke, who produced a paper roll holder with a collodion. And the collodion was a gel system which had various chemicals in it, one of which would be a silver salt, and covered in a light-sensitive emulsion. And this was taken up by Eastman Kodak and patented in 1884. Just a few cameras leading through. 1845, Ottawell's double folding camera. They were beautiful things, but this would have, I don't know whether this was a single lens or whether it was a hybrid lens, but they were quite neat as being easier to fold. Basically, the photographic plate would be placed in the back in the dark and then exposed over a period of time to light, and then taken out of the camera in the dark and fixed. When I think of old photographers, particularly portrait photographers, I think of the man in the studio with a black cloth over his head up to the back of the camera, because basically you would look through the plate. This used 10 by 12 inch wet collodion plates, so they were quite big. And just as a matter of interest, where it was quoted, I have quoted the specifications. It was a 16-inch lens, effectively f20. The sliding box presumably gives you the opportunity to focus by sliding the box backwards and forwards. I put this in because I thought it was a rather beautiful piece of equipment. The Thornton Pickard Royal Ruby. It was designed as a field camera, and it took 3 sizes of plates. And again, this was where bellows came in for effectively focusing. The first reflex camera was a Soho reflex coming in at 1905. Very much the same as DSLR cameras today, but because it used wet plates, people found it easier to set up the wet plate from the rear of the camera because they were pretty insensitive. So it was actually better to look at the plate itself and set it up that way. So it wasn't really very successful. Kodak. The first Kodak, which was a forerunner, I guess, to the Brownie, was launched in 1888 and was basically a cardboard box with a lens in the front, but using the 100 exposure film using Leon Warnake's roll film technique. That would produce, the way it was set up, it would produce circular images, you can see in the middle picture. I put a couple of Ks up there. I didn't know this actually until it was Ray who sent me something through with a little bit of information on cameras. And the origin of the name Kodak relates really to absolutely nothing. They thought Kodak, the K, was a very strong letter, so they chose to begin with K, and then basically played around with other letters from the alphabet until they found a word which they thought was appropriate. So that's where the name Kodak comes from. And of course, we all know this, Kodak Brownie in 1900. It had a fixed 100mm lens at f14. And that was launched in 1900 for $1 or £1.25 here. I was going to work out what £1.25 was in today's sums, but didn't get around to doing it. But it was pretty cheap. And there were heaps of different Brownies, going up to the mid-50s, I think. They got a bit more sophisticated in 1946 with a 620. That was 100mm with an adjustable aperture. And a slider to select between portraits and landscape. So it was a portrait 5 to 10 feet and then 10 feet and beyond. I think it wasn't clear, but I think this was done by switching the lens. There's a little lever here, then you set the aperture on the side. It had 2 viewers. It's not a rangefinder, but there are 2 viewers. One for portrait, the little viewer on the top, and one for landscape. So when you turn it on its side, you actually use a different viewer. Just a selection, really. There are so many of these things that I just thought I'd pick a little selection. The Brownie 127 that used presumably a 127 film. The Instamatic that I'm sure most of us remember, which had a viewer here, and it also introduced probably a selenium cell as a light meter. And it probably used the data from that for automated shots. A little bit further on in time came the Brownie, which was a cartridge. So basically you had the film rolled onto put it in one side of the camera, that went over to the other side, and the whole thing was contained in a cartridge. You didn't have to rewind it back onto the spool. And the Kodak disc camera, I don't know if anybody remembers that. I certainly do, because I thought it was a wonderful idea.
I remember selling them.
Really?
I worked in a shop in 1968.
Yeah. It was, I thought it was a brilliant idea, actually. It was slim and easily go into the pocket. And there was only one downside. It took absolutely bloody awful pictures. It had a very small film, and apparently there was a special process described by Kodak in producing these low format images that hardly anybody used. So I don't know how much truth there is in that. I just read it. I did have one actually, and fortunately it got stolen out of my wife's handbag. So she had it on the top of her handbag and it disappeared. I wasn't too unhappy about that. And the Instamatic Reflex. It was auto with aperture priority fixed, 126 cartridge formats. It had a 45 and 50 millimeter. I think they were interchangeable lenses, I'm not sure. f2.8 and f1.9. And well, it must have been because I've put it here from what I've read, with others up to 200 millimeters. That was probably one of the very few SLR cameras that weren't 35 millimeter. Then came Polaroid. I got 3 pictures here. I found it in 1937. I think we all know this, the Polaroid land camera. But that was to exploit his use of polarizing polymer, which I presume he had developed. And his original market was in polarizing sunglasses. And still around today. 1948, that's a date I don't remember when I was born. Then I've just picked a few perhaps landmark cameras, the Leica, which is, I didn't, I keep moving my mouse, sorry. As far back as 1925. And I didn't know this, but it was used to check 35 millimeter cine film because it had such a variable quality that they needed to check batches of it. And that's what was the first, the prototype Leica was basically to sort of quality check 35 millimeter film. And that gave them the idea that they could really produce a very nice camera with very nice lenses. Hasselblad. I was interested to read about their history, actually. It was originally a Swedish trading company, and the owner's son was interested in photography. So he set up a photography division. Really, I think it was just a personal thing because he didn't really think he would make much money out of it, but he'd get his photographs for free. They actually became in 1888 the sole Swedish distributor for Eastman products. But during the Second World War, they were approached by the military to develop a military camera, basically an aerial camera, which they did, and really went on from there. This was a particularly good camera, and as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, that was a medium format film, which is much larger than 35mm. Just a few pictures of it, and a little bit more history. I thought I'd do that because this isn't the actual camera that they took on the Apollo space mission to the moon, but effectively it was very similar. It was an 80mm lens, which they call the Hasselblad 500, and I think this is a great picture of what's it called, the blue marble or something like that, and the Earthrise, quite iconic pictures, I think. Canon. This again was 1935, and this was a 35mm film rangefinder camera. Initially supplied with Nikkor lenses, and Canon had a significant range of top quality cameras between, or this particular Canon, which developed into the Canon 7 to 1951. I put this one up because I've got a Zenith E, and it's really good with the camera. It had this is interchangeable lenses, and it used the I think, oh, I forget now, the E20 or something, which was a standard screw thread for the lenses, which is, I think, originally used on Praktica. And I think if you've got any older ones, Ray, my lenses probably fit your cameras. Not that I've got a decent range of lenses.
I've got a Zocchi, which is a similar screw thread, but I don't think they quite fit.
They don't. It was something like 42mm with a millimeter thread or something.
Yeah, it's very similar to the Pentax screw, I think. They might have been into.
Sorry, I meant to say Pentax, not Praktica.
Yeah.
Pentax.
Well, Praktica was the same, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I noticed you've got an Industar lens on there, because the lens that they tended to have in most of the Zeniths were Helios. Helios lenses.
That picture I got off the internet is not my camera. I took a picture of my camera, and when I sharpened it up, I was so ashamed the way the dust came out that I really didn't want to put it up. This was a much better picture. I think I've got a Helios 50mm on mine, and it's a selenium cell, so it doesn't need a battery. And I did actually test it out the other day because I've got a film to put in it. I tested it out the other day against my camera, and it was significantly different. So I'm not too sure that it's reading very well. But it was quite good. You know, you set your film on the top, and then you set the aperture you wanted it, and you know, it told you the exposure. So that was quite good. I'll just have to try it and see. And then one of the first Nikon's 1959, the Nikon F. It was interesting that the F was the F in the middle of the word reflex, because R is not very widely used in Asian countries, and they're not very good at pronouncing it. So that's why they use the F rather than the R. And until the introduction of the Z series Nikons, the Nikon F mount has been used ever since. The standard was a 50mm f2. They also had a 50mm f1.4, which sounds quite good. Nothing more to say on that, really. This, I think, it's a really nice looking camera, you know. I think it's partly because of the picture that's been taken that shows the colour in the lens. But 64 to 76, did you have one of these, Ray?
I have used it. I didn't have one myself.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of those.
Yeah.
I've got a really early one and I've got a later one because they changed through the years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of changes there. Yeah, yeah. It's just that, again, a little bit of trivia that Ringo Starr used one in the film A Hard Day's Night. I didn't notice. Then digital cameras. I think that's quite interesting because when you look at the first recognised digital camera, and that was Kodak developed. Stephen Sutton in 1975 had 0.01 megapixels and took 23 seconds to record its first digital photograph. That picture doesn't do it justice because there was it effectively looked like a PDP-11 computer underneath it, but it was a box of electronics underneath it, so it wasn't just that bit. Then there was all sorts of quite decent stuff and rubbish that came out into the market. Canon launched an analog camera, which was basically recorded onto tape. I think it was tape or a disc, a video disc, for the price of US dollars 999 pounds. And the video disc, I believe, cost about 450 dollars. I think the first real digital camera to go on sale was the 1990. It doesn't seem that long ago to me. Perhaps that's my age. That had a CCD image sensor and then connected directly to PC for download, but there weren't many details on that. Adobe Photoshop hit the shops in 1990. The Hasselblad introduced one in 1991, which is effectively just with a different back, 4.1 megapixels. The Apple Quick Take, 1994. That was 0.3 megapixels. Then the Canon Digital Ixus range. I had a few of those. This picture here was my first one, the Digital Ixus 5.
They're neat little cameras.
They were good. I've recently, I just bought a new battery for it to see how good it really is. I mean, it's not very good, but it, you know, in its day, it was fantastic. 2.1 megapixels. And then this thing here, I had one of these, which was 6 megapixels, which was ample for everything I used to take pictures for brochures and things like that. You know, and provided you didn't blow them up too much, they were really, really good. So I had 3 or 4 of us, a succession of 3 or 4 of those. And finally, this lot. I used to laugh at camera phones, but we should shut up about that these days because they are so good. Just running through them, the Sharp 0.11 megapixels. That was in 2000. The Nokia 910, it said everybody remembers. I don't actually. 2005, which was 2 megapixels. Samsung 2008, 8 megapixels. Then the Sony Xperia coming up 2013, 13 megapixels. I could have put loads of cameras in between here, and I just picked out what seemed convenient. And there to compare what's going on today, the iPhone 11 Pro, which has got 3 cameras. It quotes as 3 cameras, each of 12 megapixels. And that's wide angle standard and a 2 times telephoto. And I think they're talking about optical telephoto. I'm not sure. And then the Huawei P30 Pro. I believe there's a P40 Pro now. I know that's even better. But they're quoting a standard lens of 50 megapixels with an ultra wide at 40 megapixels and 5 times telephoto of 12 megapixels. It's where I get confused with these cameras because when you read into it, some of them have got 3 lenses, but I don't think they've actually got 3 sensors. Some of them have got a very, very large, very high resolution. I mean, 50 megapixels. And you'd think, what sort of image you're going to get onto a tiny little sensor? But that I don't really know. So if anybody knows better than I do, then there you are. I think that's my lot. Yep. I'll stop the share. And we're back. Nobody else has joined.
No. Awesome. Chris?
I don't know if anybody's got any comments, but I'm, a lot of stuff there was done from research. So whether I picked the right cameras, whether the Canon one I picked was best, or the Pentax, I don't know. It's just really to pick a selection. Chris is gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of debate about where photography started, really. I mean, you could go back to...
I know.
Realise that silver nitrate, as it was for him, went black in sunlight. And but really, the first cameras were daguerres, so that daguerre-type process. Even though Fox Talbot was working on his kind of negative process, daguerres was the first commercially available cameras, and there aren't many of those cameras left around. They're all in museums. They're all worth a small fortune. Yeah. But if you go to Laycock Abbey, which is not far from Bath, that is where Henry Fox Talbot lived and where he did all of his. Yeah. It's a trust place, and they've got a little museum there full of the mousetraps, as Fox Talbot's wife called his little cameras. He made these little cameras out of wooden boxes. They've got some of them there, and they've also got the first ever negative, which is a picture of a window in the Abbey. And you can go and stand, you walk past the window as you walk through the Abbey. It's on the first floor. You can go and stand on the photo there. But it's worth a visit. If you've not been to Laycock Abbey, it's quite... The National Trust have now changed their claim that it's the birthplace of photography, because obviously it isn't. Well, it's debatable, but most people would say that it was Degueur, the that's where photography.
Depends what you mean by photography. I mean, one of the things I read was that some of these cave drawings were sort of inspired by images that came through a hole in the wall. You know, they traced those because some of them are so good. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. You can't really ask them, can you? But I found a lot of conflicting information, to be honest.
Well, I think so many people claim to be the origins, but I mean, I think it certainly goes back to the Persian Empire, doesn't it? As you correctly said, when they first really realised that light travelled in straight lines. And of course, once they realised that light travelled in straight lines, in many ways, a lot of the development that followed through was probably inevitable in a way, because that sort of led to lenses and so on and so forth. But I think it's generally agreed that it was the Persians. They were clever baggers, you know.
They are.
They still are, yeah. Yeah, Chris, that compact, that disc camera that you showed, the Kodak one, I was getting confused. When I said I used to sell them, I was getting confused with the old Viewmaster things. Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what I was getting confused with, because I don't think those disc cameras, I don't think they were around in '68.
No, they were 80s.
After that,
no, it was early 70s, I think.
yeah, no, I was no.
That was early 70s because.
Well, when I saw it, I thought, "Whoa, I remember those?" But I was thinking of the old Viewmaster things.
Yeah, I know the ones you mean, but I do remember that Nora she'd been off with her sister or something, and it was before we got married, which was 76. When she came back and she said, "I lost your camera, it was on top of the bag and somebody nicked it." And I said, "Oh, that's all right, don't worry about it. It was horrible anyway." But they weren't very good. Great idea, but because they were just so small and neat.
Yeah,
But,
it was,
so it would have been, it could have been mid-70s.
Yeah. I remember talking about small. It used to be, do you remember there was one called the Minox? Do you remember the Minox?
Rings a bell.
Tiny thing. Basically spy cameras, I think, you know.
Yeah.
But they had that used a very small film.
Yeah.
It was a lot smaller than that 5mm. Yeah. I remember those.
It's just so much there. It's difficult to know what to
Oh,
talk about
loads,
because there's a lot of miniature stuff and, like you say, spy cameras, and there's just heaps of stuff which had a very, very short life, you know, in the market. But yes, yeah. So, what was next on the agenda? I think it was just the pictures. Who's got some pictures? I've
not got much to show, to be honest. I've spent the last month putting together a programme for Whitney. We've got a full programme between now and the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, with speakers and judges and stuff, and that took a whole lot of my time getting that sorted out. So I'm taking an awful lot of photos.
Well, I've taken hardly any because I've been mainly, very, believe it or not, trialing software. Some of it's nightmarish, but and you'd be surprised to hear that I've actually paid for some. Quite a lot of money.
Hang on a minute, just a minute.
I know.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. So I've got a handful of pictures I could show, but they're all pretty ordinary. But you're welcome to see them if you're desperate.
Yeah, that's how I'd say that.
I've got really boring flowers to show.
Go on then.
Well, that's what I've
nearly all flowers. Shall I press on then?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. Screen. Come on. That's it. Where are we?
Close up.
Hang on. What do I want? I want that. There we go. All right. Can you see anything?
Yeah, I can see a set of icons.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah.
There.
Cool.
Right. I'll get rid of this and I can see what I'm doing. So believe it or not, that's a water lily. That's exciting, isn't it? I told you it'd be exciting.
I think that's good.
I quite liked it actually.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I thought the leaves provided a bit more interest.
Yeah.
You ready? You ready for me to sock it to you with the next one?
Yeah, go on.
Look at that.
Wow.
That's a lichness.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't. I mean, unfortunately, it would be nice if that was a bit better defined. But you know, it's the way it is. They're such an intense pink. They're quite incredible.
Yeah.
And there's loads of them. So I was just playing around, to be honest. That's normally that. To be honest, that is actually an upright spire. But I forgot that because I use the camera for astrophotography, I've got it so that it doesn't actually ever do portrait. It'll always show it landscape.
Oh, I see.
Which is good. So anyway, I haven't turned it round, but they're pretty little flowers. I quite like them.
Yeah.
And even got an insect, just to show there is wildlife. See,
Oh,
not just a flower.
Yeah.
I haven't a clue what that is,
Hmm.
but I quite liked it.
Yeah, it's
Good.
good.
Yeah, I like that.
It'd be very complimentary.
Yeah.
That's another water lily. That's not so good. It's a bit overexposed,
Bit
actually.
overexposed, yeah.
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 I mean, I really took it because I just got these little webs and things around, but it just didn't come, you know, it was like a lot of these things I was playing around. Just to show, I have been looking at the skies. It's not been perfect because obviously it doesn't really get completely dark at the moment.
No.
But this is known as the Great Globular Cluster, M13.
Ah,
And although I bought this software called PixInsight, and it was my first go at trying to process something with it. I can honestly tell you it's like a sledgehammer to use this thing, because it's got something like, I don't know, something like 150 processes built into it, plus a whole load of other stuff. They've used it for Hubble and various other things. So it's quite good, but
yeah.
you know, I'm a beginner. But this globular cluster, they think contains about 1 million stars.
Wow.
Blimey.
Hang on. 1, 2,
I know.
3.
So I really needed to bring out the centre a bit more. But when I did that, it just looked weird actually. So that's the one I did.
So who comes up with these
And
fabulous names of globular cluster?
yeah, well, they are globular. They're interesting actually because they think they actually are almost as old as the universe, and they're sort of circling around the centre of the galaxy. But that's the best one that you can see in the northern hemisphere, which is up more or less overhead at the moment.
Ah,
And that's the moon.
yeah.
Just in case you didn't recognise it.
Don't say. Yeah.
And that didn't come out as well. I mean, that's a stack of something like 50 actual frames,
All right.
which did reduce the noise, but I just didn't get the focus quite right, irritatingly. And
But it's not easy, is it?
no, it sort of it was oscillating, but I mean, the stacking has improved it quite a bit compared with the original image.
Yeah.
The thing that I was really after was this crater here. This is Clavius. And you
Yeah.
can see there's a little ring of little craters that run across it. And there's
Yeah.
about 6 of them, but you can only really see 3. So I was a bit disappointed. That really shows that the focus just wasn't quite right.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all from me, I'm afraid.
Okay.
There you go. I can see the excitement written across your faces as I look at them. At least you had the sort of, what I can only say is the politeness to open your eyes when I came back again.
It's just
Well,
a
I
thought.
did actually mute myself just in case you heard my snoring. You know? Did you have some, Dean? You said some
I have got some, yeah.
dragonflies in flight?
Indeed, they are. Right, let's have a look. Okay. Ooh, stop doing all that. Right. So I've been on a bit of a wildlife kick. This.
Oh, that's
Oh,
nice.
yeah.
Oh, excellent.
So this is taken at RSPB Otmore, and as you walk down the main track there, there's a hedge on, and there's a reed bed the other side of it, and there's occasionally there are breaks in the hedge. So I kind of stopped and I'm looking out to see what's about, and this reed warbler And I looked it up, Philip, and it's definitely a reed warbler. It came and landed about 15 feet in front of me, right smack in front of me. I couldn't, it's just sat there and posed. So I couldn't resist. I didn't realise it had a fly in its beak until I got home and processed the shot.
No, it's really nice.
And it went, when I finished taking my shots, he went down into what I think is probably a nest in the reeds somewhere. But got a few of him. But,
Yeah, that's a super picture.
What lens is that, Dean?
that's the 100-400, but it had a 1.4 teleconverter on it.
Right.
But yeah, it's. I was so happy. I was about halfway down the track. I've been there maybe half an hour, and that was it. I was, all right now.
What aperture are you using there?
So say again.
What aperture are you using?
This is about f9 or 10, somewhere there. That's
really
what it actually is. f9, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 800 ISO, 250.
Lovely picture. Yeah.
That's good.
Well, coming to a wildlife competition near you, I'm certainly one of those, I would have thought. Bog standard dragonfly, this is at Otmore as well. And I can't remember what kind of butterfly this is, small white or something probably. And a bee doing a vertical landing. That came out quite well actually. That's quite
It's good, isn't it?
And then a local landowner contacted me and said that he wanted some photographs for his website. So I'm in the process of doing it at the moment. So I've been given permission to go places that I can't normally go to. And this is a place called Pool Copse. Tony, when I met you, I was coming back from there.
All right.
It's kind of, you go to the allotments and go off kind of up to the right through that field. There's a track through the middle of it. And then up to the right again, there's a copse of trees with a pool in it called Pool Copse. And there were these beehives there. So I took some pictures of the bees, but I gave them a bit of a wide berth. And there was some flowers and the usual stuff. He wanted some insects. And the local flora and fauna was his brief. I haven't finished yet, but there were a lot of these. This is a marbled white. And there are a lot of those around, especially where all the grassland is. And they really like this purple, I don't know, whatever it is.
Looks like a thistle.
They seem to like those a lot. So I kind of wandered around his land. This was sunset one day. Now this pool is one of the drainage pools, so the flood prevention pool. So that's on the house walk. So if you go down the high street opposite the Baptist church, go down that.
I know what that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the pools on the right. And this is where the dragonflies were that I took today. So when we come to those, you will know where I was. The best pictures, I was stood here. On the edge of the bank there. There's another marbled white look. And when it comes, this is close to sunset, as you can see. And these, the butterflies go torpid. They roost for the evening. This thing did not move. I got so close to it. Can't believe it. You'll see perhaps with the next one. There we go.
Yeah.
They just kind of gone to sleep. So you can take shots of. The only thing I've done to this shot, these petals went all the way to the edge. So I gave it a bit of space. But what else we got? Okay, so this is around there as well. There must be 1 million crickets and grasshoppers around that pool. You put your foot down and they scatter like you wouldn't believe. So I've got 2 of whatever this species is. One's a male, one's a female. I'm not sure which yet. I haven't researched it, but you'll see this one's brown all over.
You did well to get that because they're not normally, they're quite mobile, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah, this is with a macro lens and a flash.
Really?
Yeah, so we got quite close. But what I do, I start off far away and then get gradually closer, taking shots as I move in until they get up and go off. But this one, I was close, quite close to it. Not as close as I was to this thing though. This is a lace wing, and it's tiny. You can see how big these grass seeds.
Yeah.
You can see how close I was because the flashes made the background go dark.
Yeah.
But I saw it land. I've never seen one before. It's beautiful. It's got copper eyes and these lacy wings. I can see what's called a lace wing.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And there's the other gender. Whatever. These are quite big ones. But they're all
He's on for dear life there, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing when you start walking around the other side of the pool, away from the track. Just what's there? There's all sorts of things there,
Must go and have a look.
including this lady here. She's laying eggs in the pool.
Mm.
That's what she said.
What settings have you got there, Dean?
Oh, this isn't all right. Yeah. Well, I started off at a 2000th of a second, thinking that was good. That's all right, and of course it wasn't.
No, I was going to say because that's 8,000. Yeah, because that is so crisp.
Yeah.
5.
Yeah, I can see why none of mine have ever got to that.
It's a bright sunny day, and we're still at 1600 ISO. But with Canon cameras, I mean, Nikon claim, and they probably are better with ISO low light, but Canon are better when it's bright. When you move the ISO up, you get less noise when it's bright. It's a lovely shot. So I've been trying 2 years to get shots like this. I couldn't believe it. It just kind of came along in front of me and starts laying eggs and buzzing around. And as I say, I've only processed 2. That's the other one.
That's a good one.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
A bit in flight. I've got some that I haven't processed yet, where the 2, because the male has got a blue tail.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this is the female because it was laying the eggs, but you know the other version, and I've got a couple of shots with them both in. The male's with a. Well, I was so pleased when I got home and I saw this. Like, oh yes! I had all sorts to get these flipping things in flight.
Did you have it on a fairly fast drive, Dean?
Yeah, so I started off thinking, well, you know, the camera can help me. I'll have all of the focus points active, and I'll have it on continuous focus and high-speed drive. But all that happened was that the camera just focused in the wrong place, and I missed what could have been some fantastic shots of some emperor dragonflies, because the camera was just focusing in the wrong place. So I changed it to a vertical stripe through the center of the viewfinder, so that you just got this vertical stripe of points active. And I left the continuous focus and continuous drive. And there are shots like this in there. There's a lot of shots that are as sharp as this. But there are also probably twice as many that aren't, that are just...
Yeah.
So you've got to get all those to get the ones that are in focus.
But it's worth it, isn't it? Because you get some lovely shots there.
Yeah. I'm so happy. So happy. 2 years I've been trying to do this. I've tried all sorts. I've tried manual focus. I've tried spot focus. I've tried wider angle and all sorts of things. And finally, it's come off. So, I mean,
That's brilliant. Yeah.
that's
Very good.
That's what I've got to show you. Oh,
No, it's good. Very impressive.
there you go.
Right.
And that was it. End of it.
Philip, you're very quiet.
You don't want me to follow that, do you?
Not really, no.
Still left that to the end.
We had the
Nobody wants to show that stuff anymore now.
last week. His bus got open. So the leader of the group contacted the U3A and he said, as long as you don't car share and you keep social distance and have a maximum of 6 people in the group, you can actually have photographic trips.
Oh, do you know, I thought that. I
Yeah.
thought we could do something like that.
Group A went at 2 o'clock, and Group B went at 2:05. It's because there was 11 of us.
Yeah.
But right, so it's just onto screen share, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep.
Right, what do I want? Desktop.
There's the green button at the bottom in the middle.
Yeah, that's brought that one up.
Click on that, and then it should highlight screen. Or you've got a Mac, haven't you? I can't remember what it is. Is it
Desktop, I think.
desktop?
The
Is it?
screen is the top. It's the top left, I think.
Top
It'll
one,
come
yeah.
up.
And then share.
Again. Desktop.
Yeah, and then the blue share button.
Open system preferences. Don't really want that, do we? Not gonna. No.
Have you not got a share button?
Sorry. Well, let's share the screen there, and I've got a screen come up with desktop one.
Make sure desktop has been clicked, and then go down to the bottom right and click share.
Yeah. So just go. This is open system preferences. Okay, they weren't that good anyhow. Don't know. I've done it before, but
I seem to remember I had that problem with the Mac first time I did it, but I can't remember what the solution was. These system preferences.
yeah. Okay, well, we've all been to Buscott many times.
No worries. Okay.
I mean, I'll have a look at what I've got. I mean, I haven't really done a lot. Let me have a look anyway. I think you've seen some of these. See if there's anything here worth looking at. Yeah, nothing particularly exciting.
That's nice. I like that
Yeah.
one. Good.
Yeah, yeah. Just a shame that this bit here is just a little bit is out of focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I wasn't. You know, it's one of these shots. You see it and you take it quickly. And you
Yeah.
think afterwards. If I'd had a bit of time to really think about that, you know, because you could, yeah, you get the sort of, you know, the golden mean and the what would you call it?
The golden ratio.
The ratio, yeah. Because you know, if you don't know if let's have a look. Yeah, you see, I've cut that down a bit.
Yeah.
But you see, you could play around with that, and if you let's have a look at the options, that one.
Yes. It fits well, doesn't it? Yeah.
So you could get that right, that one there.
Yeah.
You know, you could kind of get that, play around with it. But I haven't really done anything with it. Apart from, as I say, I just cut it down. What else have we got? Yeah, these are just playing around in the garden again, as you do. So I'm just not getting out enough these days.
You're busy. I thought you must have been when I saw the program. Oh God, somebody's all those speakers and judges.
Oh yeah, yeah, it was amazing. Amazing how quickly I did manage to get them in the end. Actually, switch these off.
That's good.
What's that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's with a macro, a 90mm macro. These were just clouds that I thought, if I take these, I can use them as backgrounds sometime. The lad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these ones, these are nothing at all. These at the end, I don't think. No. Yeah, so I'm afraid not a lot there.
Well, I got a few. Same old thing as last time, just flowers in the garden. But I was trying to do some focus stacking, and I played around a bit manually, and it worked quite well. But I had a few weeks ago, I had another attack of gas. And for those who don't know what that means, it's gear acquisition syndrome.
I'm good for that.
I was going to say, I thought we were just lucky we're on Zoom.
Well, it does help in a lot of respects, doesn't it? And I bought myself a Z6, and I like it. I haven't got rid of the 750, and I won't do. But it's got quite a few good things, and the focus. But obviously that's all on the sensor, and that seems to work quite well. And the problem I always have with the 750, that quite often on a tripod, I like to use the live view and for focusing, and really it didn't work very well, because I think when we went to Didcot, Dean, I was trying to use it in the dark, and it was pretty poor. But that works pretty well. There's a few other features I like about it. One of them is focus bracketing, and I had a go with it when I got the camera. It's about 6 weeks ago now, and they seem to work all right. I did some. I'm trying to do one with a little toy car, and it just didn't work. And so I have to, whether it's I'm not using it properly, it just didn't. You focus on the front of the object, and then you just let it go, and it focuses through. And it didn't really work. It wasn't working properly. And whether that was finger trouble, or there is an issue, possible issue with the Z6, because it's got a different lens mount. And I've got the converter, but it does say, nobody says it in the reviews, and nobody says it when they're selling it. But when you get the manual, it says, some lenses don't really focus very well with the converter, because I got a range of Nikon lenses, but they all work pretty well.
Well, they should do.
But I just wonder whether it is something to do with that, and when it's set in auto. But it's I've got the converter, the lens mount converter, and then I got a Sigma lens. And handheld, I mean, it seems to work fine, but I've got to investigate that. So,
have you got the latest firmware in there?
Sorry?
Have you got the latest firmware?
Yes, I have. Yeah, yeah. I think it's probably finger trouble, to be honest. But I thought I knew how to use it. I mean, it's not difficult. So I'll have another try tomorrow. But I tried it manually, and that's all right. But manually, you tend to perhaps go a little bit too far, and when you produce it, you've got sort of little blurred spots in it. But it's quite fun to do. So that was that. And the other thing I did, I got a 1.4 teleconverter about 2 weeks before you put your thing on the email recently, Ray.
Oh yeah, yeah.
On teleconverter. I didn't actually want
That
to.
was Chris's. That was Chris. Chris
It
Trott.
was Chris, yeah, yeah. And it was too late, really. I didn't really want to, but really, it's one of the best things I bought for a long time because I've got that 100mm or 110mm macro, and that makes so much difference because you've got the 150, haven't you, Dean?
Yeah.
And it really does. You know, I don't use it all the time, but you know, it just makes it so much easier to get close. You don't really have to get quite so close to the subject. So basically, I've just been taking a few pictures of the garden. They won't take long. I've got about 10 of them, I think. I share the screen. Stop. Oh, from that share. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
This was an attempt at doing focus stacking. I wanted to get a really deep focus on it, and that didn't work. But one of the pictures I took, I thought was quite good, and that was just one of them. That one of the best out of the set. It's one of our foxgloves in the garden. We're trying to, what should I say? I don't like the term rewild, but we've turned half our lawn in the front garden into a wild garden. I got some seeds last year, and it was a mixture. Most of these grasses they're derived from the lawn, not the seeds I put down. And it's only one of the seeds in the pack, which is about 50% of the pack turned out, and they're rather nice. These little things here, I can't remember what they're called, but they're quite pretty, and there were lots of them. But now they've all died back, and it just looks like an unkempt lawn.
Easy care, though.
Absolutely.
I was just going to say, you know, that's what the things people will do just so they don't have to mow their lawn, you know.
No, I mean, it's a good idea, Chris. I'm going to adopt it.
Yeah, I'm rewilding. That's the. It was quite pretty though for a couple of weeks. I took one or two of the individuals.
Actually, is that a salsify?
It might be actually, yeah.
We've got loads of these in the garden.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same, but
yeah, it's
I
something
think
similar.
it is a salsify.
Yeah. Well, we've had sort of a handful of little poppies come up and some other things. I'm not sure what they are. So they are there, but you're then supposed to let them all die back, let the seeds fall. Then you mow it and you let it dry, and then you rake it up to make sure you don't break up the seeds. And hey presto, it'll come up again next year. But we're going to extend it. We've decided it's a success. They're quite pretty little things.
Actually, no, if that's the same one, it's not a salsify.
No, that is the same one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah. And that could have been good if I'd have focused on his head. But that was one of these, you just saw it and took it, and it was only a single shot. You know, I didn't have time to set a multiple shot on it, and I seem to have focused on his bottom rather than his head, but that could have been quite good. That's another one. And some other pictures. I think some of these you might have seen before, actually.
I mean, that's quite sort of architectural. I quite like the way the out of focus bit on the left looks with that
Yeah.
bud coming out of it.
Yeah, yeah. That was a multiple focus. I think I might have shown that last time. That's one of my poppies. I think the only poppy. It came up one at a time in the lawn. I think. Yeah, that's it. That's the lot. Was anybody else? Jean, have you got anything?
Oh, right.
Can you hear us, Jean?
Can you mute yourself? Unmute yourself.
What to put up the
Musical voice again.
melodic voice?
Right.
Is this another one in your garden?
You're not dead. You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it?
Just a bird raising the garden. I thought it was quite nice.
Yes, it is.
Oh dear.
It was good. Lovely yesterday.
This should give you like these class.
I can hear you properly.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one.
A passion flower or something.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah.
Smash and flower. Yeah.
Yeah.
it? You getting your shots ready for the competition?
Yes.
Oh yes.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Mm.
Allium, is it?
Yeah.
Geez, I know mackerel. Ah, squid.
My squirrel. It's the rose. Very odd. That's it. How do I get back?
That's, look at the top. There you go. I did it for you.
Thank you.
I tell you, Jean, you're so musical.
And
Have you got your shots ready for the competition then? The gardens and flowers?
I've got one ready.
I sent mine to Brian today.
Oh, did you? Oh, you're in early.
Oh,
Well, when's it got to be there? So it's not long, is it?
21st.
Is it 21st?
yeah.
So
Plenty of
you're
time.
3 weeks early. Yeah.
Oh, it's
You
not
must
going
be
to.
ones
Do
in.
you want to see? I'll show you if you like.
No. Save it.
We'll see what happens. I'm expecting. Who is it that posts all those picture of flowers? I'm expecting her to win.
Sylvia.
Sylvia, yeah.
Yeah, she's got some great stuff.
Yeah, she's good at it. Cool. So,
Right.
what about outings then? Are we at a stage where we might think we could go somewhere? or
We
we
can do it, can't we?
Yeah.
Hang
Well,
on,
we're
let's
going to have to go individually, obviously.
But from the 4th, you only need to be a metre apart. So you could
Yeah.
probably have 2 to a car. But where would we go? This is the question. It's going to have
Well,
to
the
be.
other thing is to maybe try and stay fairly local then. Oh, but it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't really matter. No.
Anybody got any ideas?
What would we be focusing? What would be concentrating on doing? 'Cause I mean,
Well, I don't know. It depends where you want to go.
One of the gardens would be good, wouldn't it? I mean, we've still got, because we've still got 3 weeks for the competition. You know, we might find some inspiration in some of the open gardens.
Yeah.
Or somewhere like Hidcote or
Yeah.
I think you have to pre-book Hidcote, but I
Yeah.
could pre-book. I could try to pre-book, say, I don't know, 6 or 7 tickets.
oh, yes.
Let's see what I can find out.
Yeah.
Leave with me. I'll let you know. Cool. All right then.
Well,
Yourself.
and you don't have to.
Any better?
You're going to have to switch your mic off again. Right.
Back.
That's pretty good.
The gardens were quite good at Buscott this week, but and you don't have to pre-book. It's open from 2 till 6 every day.
Well, that's been my backup then.
Yeah.
Oscar, I'll have a look at Hidcote first because it's an actual garden, isn't it?
Yeah.
In full flow is amazing. It's really nice. But didn't we go there last year? I think we did.
Yeah.
But so I'll see what I can do. Would you prefer Hidcote to Buscott or the other way around?
The only thing about Hidcote is it I seem to remember, you know, that it's not easy to sort of stay away from people, is it?
Well, narrow paths are
All these paths through, you know, it's
Yeah.
quite difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they've got a one-way system in place.
Yeah, they must do.
You'd have to have. Yeah. Yeah.
But then that means, you know, you kind of feel you need to keep
Gotta
walking.
keep
Yeah.
moving on. Yeah. Oh, all right. Leave it with me, and I'll have a little look. We might.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I'll see what I can do. Okay.
Okay.
Right. We're all done.
I was going to do another Lightroom next
Oh,
week.
yeah. Which day was that?
Well, it'll be Wednesday again.
Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah. What I was thinking is that I was going to go back on the organisational side and do things like go a bit more depth into collections
Yeah.
and keywording, you know, that sort of stuff.
Setting up the folders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then I've actually found a resource somewhere where there's a complete free course on, and it goes into everything about Lightroom, and it's free.
Yeah.
So what I might do is I might just publish that afterwards, rather than me trying to do it all again. You know, because it takes a lot of time to do properly. And if other people have already done it, you know, so let me just look that out, and I'll let you see it, because it's a really good resource, you know, and it's got lots and lots of different tutorials on different aspects of, you know, of Lightroom. So I'll have a quick look through, and if it looks as though it's good, then I'll publish that instead. We'll still do next week, but then we'll play it by ear after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then for August, have you got anything in mind for August, Dean?
Well, I can come up with something. Has anyone got anything they want desperately to be covered?
Yeah, well, one thing I thought might be useful is Flash, particularly, you know, the things like the relationship between, you know, obviously there's the normal aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, but then you've got flash intensity and then the distance of the flash from the, the subject. So I think there's a good bit to go into there, putting your camera on manual and just understanding flash a bit more.
Yeah.
All right. Flash it is.
I mean, there's plenty there to do, I think. Not on equipment specifically, just more the the technical aspects of getting it right.
Okay.
And how things like the distance, what impact that has, the distance away from the subject, and whether you should have it on full flash or all the different levels you can have.
Yeah, okay. White balance has a big effect as well. We have to change that. Okay. I'll get to work on that then when I've got a few days coming up where I can't go out because of the weather. So
okay.
I might start that then. All right then.
All right.
First thing in the morning, Dean. Early.
I'll let you know, Philip, when I go out. If you want to get up at that time. All right. Okay. So I guess we'll see you all in a week.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye then. Bye.